Are you suggesting that someone's trying to make a real-life sequel?
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
No, come on, man.
Oh, please. By definition alone, they're inferior films.
Bullshit generalization. Many sequels have surpassed their original.
Oh, yeah?
Name one.
I'll be back.
Freedom, you're my older brother, and I love you. But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family you live. Never.
I just can't believe you came here and did it again. You guys give up or you're thirsty for more?
Welcome in to Season 4, Episode 10 of Duel of the Greats. If you are listening to this, you are probably listening to this sometime in January, and I know that the post-holiday blues can get us all, and it's cold outside, but let me tell you something, folks. We have an uplifting couple of movies here to talk about that are going to bring you a renewed zest for life, that are going to just get you up out of your seat, ready to live your life. Tonight we are talking, and this was a popular request. Everybody wanted these two movies when we were talking about this season. We tonight have got the all-time classic.
What they want.
Yeah, we give the people what they want. And tonight, truer words were never spoken. For tonight, we are going to be doing Hellraiser versus Hellbound, Hellraiser II. Featuring one of the most iconic horror film characters of all time, Pinhead. One of the very best characters out there. You gotta love him. Now, I will say, going into this episode, I know that Steve and I are not too schooled in the Hellraiser franchise. Jeff, who is sort of our resident horror film expert, is a huge fan of the Hellraiser franchise. So
Big hellhead.
Yeah, now Jeff, I will say he's a big hellhead. That's his. I assume that's what they call him. Yeah, that's what they call him. He's a big hellhead. Even though Pinheads was right there, they call them hellheads. And and shit.
Bites, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's many things. You know what? We'll come up with that. We'll ask our fans. Email us in. Speaking of which, if you want to hit us up on the socials about this highly requested episode, we are Duel of the Greats pretty much everywhere. On Instagram, if you'd like to email us, duelofthegreats@gmail.com. On TikTok, we are Duel Podcast. So if you're on TikTok, like myself, you can find us at Duel Podcast, but shoot us a message. We would love to hear from you, particularly about this episode, because we know it's going to be popular and we know it's going to inspire a lot of debate. And I do think, as I was saying, it's important to preface this episode by saying that I'm going to be the judge. Steve is going to be defending the first Hellraiser. Jeff is going to be defending Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Jeff is a bit of an expert on the series, though, so I might just very quickly, Jeff, if you don't mind, kick it to you to maybe, even though these are wildly popular movies seen by the masses, maybe give us a little bit of insight about, they're based on a book, the writer of the book directed the first film. I know there's like 10 films in the series. If you just give us a brief overview of the series, that might be helpful to some of our viewers who are not the cinephiles like us.
Cinephiles. C-E-N.
C-E-N. Yes, correct. I'm glad you picked up on that because I was going there. So the book that started it all is written by Clive Barker, who's one of my favorite authors. The book is called The Hellbound Heart. And then when they made the movie, I'm not sure why he changed the name to Hellraiser, probably because it sounded cooler than The Hellbound Heart, which sounds kind of like a Edgar Allan Poe poem. But anyway, it is essentially, the premise is there is a puzzle box that you can get, and it's sought out by people who are who have basically encountered every form of pleasure that they can in life, and it's not enough to sate them. They keep wanting more, they keep wanting more, they keep wanting more. And so eventually they get led to the puzzle box, And then if you solve the puzzle box in a particular configuration, then you can call upon the Cenobites. And the Cenobites are just a race of people, demons to some, angels to others. They are sort of like hell demons that, but are very. A lot of what they do is tied into this sort of sexual pain and sexual relationship, sort of almost like a BDSM aesthetic. And actually, Clive Barker, one of his inspirations for the way he depicts the Cenobites was Clive Barker is gay, and he at the time he was going to a lot of like different gay clubs and stuff, and that some of those obviously he took it a little bit further, but a lot of the some of the outfits and different things were in the BDSM culture were part of the inspiration behind the Cenobites. So there's that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just whoever you solve the box, you unleash the Cenobites, they come and then they take you and they essentially give you all sorts of pain because there's sort of that thin line between pain and pleasure. That's part of the whole BDSM aesthetic. Is sort of what they're going to, and then maybe they give you too much pain and then you die, or you don't and you become a Cenobite, and that's what happens. So that's sort of the long and the short of it when it comes to the Hellraiser lore. But
it's just it's an excellent way to wash down the Christmas spirit,
the holiday
we
season,
filled ourselves
true.
with.
And the
tell me, and I'm sorry, Jeff, how many films are in this series?
11 films, the majority of which
Jesus
are your
Christ.
straight to DVD variety.
Okay.
I got to be honest, I haven't even seen all of them because so many of them are just regarded, even within the community, as just like a trash, essentially. But there's a lot
but
of.
It is,
and
in all seriousness, I think the first two are kind of considered the two best, if I'm not mistaken.
There is. We've been kind of joking about the masses in this movie, but within the Hellraiser community, the debate on which is better, this is a legitimate debate. So this is something that is talked about. So if there's any Hellraiser, any Hellheads like me out there, they're probably anxious for this debate as well. But I've seen the first 4 movies, because then after that, the 4th one was kind of almost like a sort of wrap up, and then they started making more, and some of them don't even have Doug Bradley as the actor who plays Pinhead, and he didn't even play Pinhead in some of them, and then they rebooted it 3 years ago in 22, and Jamie Clayton, she plays Pinhead, and so Doug Bradley he's kind of out. Kind of like Robert Englund and the many people who have played Jason over the the kind of he's kind of aged out of the role, I suppose you could say. But fun fact, the term Pinhead, that Pinhead is never stated in the book nor the movie as the name for the Pinhead character. In the book, he's actually called the Priest. And then, well, actually, I don't believe that there is actually even a described gender. It's just always called the Priest. Or they're just always called the Priest. And then, but on set, because of the pins, obviously, they were just sort of nicknamed, they kind of nicknamed him Pinhead. And then it stuck, and that's what he became.
Is he described even though that he is not referred to as Pinhead, is he described in the book physically in that way, that he has like hundreds of pins in his head?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that's not an invention of and I know you said the author directed the first film, so he was able to translate a lot of it.
Yeah, he wrote and directed the first one.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, well then, I think with that said, thank you, Jeff, for kind of jumping in.
You're welcome.
Just because I was not familiar with the series at all. I watched these films for the first time here over my my winter break, my Christmas break, and again, I think if you don't have that zest for life and you're feeling down, these are the ones that you need to watch along with us. So
When I have a rough day, I need to feel better. I go home, I pop in Hellbound.
I wouldn't blame you.
It's a good
I
part
wouldn't
to be
blame you. So I think without further ado, I think we got to get to the debate here and decide which one of these is better. And like I said, Steve is going to be defending our first film, Hellraiser. So, Steve, oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, I have one more question. I have one more quick
Yes.
plot-based question. Is
Of
the
course.
book, is the first, is the book, sorry, I want to say this correctly. Is the first film an adaptation of the book, or is there like leftover stories in the book, kind of like Godfather 2? Is there like leftover stories in the book that he uses for other movies, or is it just like the book and then the first movie is the book? Do you understand what I'm asking?
It is, yes. The first movie is the book. It's almost shot for shot. There are a couple like sort of small scenes and references that are in the book that didn't make it in the first movie that do show up in the second movie, but nothing to the extent of Godfather 1 and Part 2. Nothing like that.
Okay, so that was my only question, was I wanted to make sure there weren't like,
Kind of like
big
how
unused plot elements.
yeah, kind of like how in Jurassic Park, the book, right? The opening scene is
That's what I
actually
was
the
just
opening
about to
scene
say,
from the Lost World. It's
Yeah.
similar to that, right? Where there's just a couple little things that make it into the second movie, but it's almost shot for shot or scene for scene, I guess. The first movie.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, again, I apologize. Without further ado, Steve, if you would like to take us into your first reason why the original Hellraiser is the superior film, you may proceed.
Well, I'll tell you. I mostly just want to hear Jeff himself to see which ones he thinks is going to be the best. Because
I could probably just debate myself on this. I don't even need you guys.
frankly, neither of these movies is something I ever care to watch again. I watched them the first time a couple Halloweens ago, and I don't remember having such a negative, visceral reaction then as I did watching them.
It was actually a positive one, if I may interject.
I distinctly remember being like, yeah, they're okay. But I literally could not get through the second movie this time around. In the scene, there's a scene where a guy scrapes his flesh off with a razor blade. I tapped out. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I don't know if just too much has changed. The world has gotten darker. I don't know. But
Again, just a reminder to our audience, these are uplifting films that you're really gonna like. Family films, dare I say. So if you're interested at all, you're hearing these descriptions of these scenes.
It's the perfect one to pop in with your parents when you're home on Christmas break.
With parents when you're home on Christmas break.
Something that I'll throw out there for any book fans out there, if you've never read Clive Barker, he is just such a fantastic writer. Like, it's hard to describe how good he is at writing. And so if you can imagine some of these gory scenes that you're talking about, like the way he writes, it's beautiful in the book. Like it's this bizarre sort of thing where because his writing is so good, you're reading this horrific thing, but it's just this sort of beautiful prose. It's a really interesting experience. Everybody should read at least one. He's got a thing called the Books of Blood, which is just a bunch of short stories. At least start there if you're not sure. Read Midnight Meat Train, and it's fantastic.
That's
also a movie, but we're not
all-timer name.
That is probably it's my favorite short story of all time, and it's probably one of the most horrific things I've ever read. But I absolutely loved it. Sorry, sorry guys, I'm geeking out too much. I'm taking the time. This is your time, Steve. I'm sorry.
Again, Steve, I just want to remind you the whole premise of the show. You're supposed to be giving me a reason why the first Hellraiser is better than the second one. So if you'd like to jump in at any time with that reasoning, you're welcome to do that.
All right. I won't belabor the points, but there's really two main reasons why you should pick the first one and not the second one. First, Jeff just really said it all right there. Clive Barker is an outstanding writer. I've not read much by him. I don't think I've actually sat down and read an entire book by him, but I've read bits and pieces in various anthologies. And there's a piece that I'll read here in a moment to you on a Wikipedia page about Cenobites that I think perfectly illustrates what Jeff is saying. These things are horrific, but they're described so beautifully, frankly, that it draws you in. But that's reason number one. Clive Barker wrote and directed the first movie. He did not. I don't think he wrote or direct. I definitely didn't direct the second movie. So
He
just
did
by
the story.
okay,
but
but he didn't
nothing
actually
else.
write the script. Okay,
No.
so just by sheer lack of Barkerness, I think you have to give the nod to the first one. It's clearly, by definition, he was much closer to the artist's intent. So that's why you should give it the win. And then two, just from a pure, I'll say, the watching, the joy of the actual act of watching, which is there's very little, but the first movie, at least the plot takes some time to build up. It's pretty clear cut. You know kind of what's going on. The second one just jumps right in. And, a lot of this is because it's a sequel. But as we've talked about throughout this season, can a sequel both stand on its own and justify its existence? And while it does expand the mythos of the Cenobite and hell raising-ish universe, I don't know what you call it. What do you call this, Jeff? The Hellraiser franchise universe. Is there one? Like,
I don't know that there is a name for the Hellraiser universe.
All right.
The Hellverse?
Well,
I don't know.
We
just made it. We coined it.
The Hellverse. Well, either way, in the second movie, they just dive right the fuck in. There's like a 2-minute, basically, kind of refresher on the events of the first movie. But other than that, you're just in the middle of fucking plot, and you have no idea what's happening. And it just gets wilder and wackier as the thing goes on. So I think the first movie is a bit tighter from a storytelling perspective. I don't have a third point, but in lieu of the third point, I will share with you evidence of
Aren't we
Clive
only supposed to do
Barker's.
1 point at a time?
Yeah, but I
Did you
got
just
so
do 2
few.
points at once?
I'm double buckshot, just blowing both barrels here, and then you can just take the whole rest of the time to deconstruct it.
Ah, man.
Nate, I'm just interjecting.
This
Nate,
is
did
no
you watch
fun.
both movies?
I like Steve. I did I did watch. I did watch the entire first one, and loved it. Of course. I will say that the second one I didn't so much tap out on as I started it.
As you
And
vomited into your lap.
I started it and kind of had to put, I have little kids at home, and again,
Oh, no.
great
no.
movie to have with little kids around. I started it and I was kind of tired. I'd put the kids to bed, and I turned it off for the evening with the intent to finish it kind of the next day, and didn't feel a ton of appeal to come back to it. And I just knew going in that Jeff is such an expert, and you can see him so frustrated right now because clearly I know there's something rewarding at the end of the second film that I think will reinvigorate the human spirit within anyone. So I did watch the whole first one, and I watched a good part, maybe like a third of the second one, and I've yet to finish the second one.
They're like 90 minutes apiece.
Yeah, I watched, but yeah, that's about right. I probably watched like 25 minutes of it. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. That's correct.
They're tough watches. They certainly. Well, I don't know if they ride that line of pleasure and pain. Mostly pain for me. But
Well, and I'll also say to our listener, I think we've mentioned this before, on the horror scale, in terms of our hosts and the people talking to you, I am the least likely to go in on a horror film. And the horror films that I enjoy are built much more around suspense rather than gore. We are going to talk about the Scream franchise later, which is kind of a gory not to this extent, but is a gory franchise that a horror franchise that I really like. But a lot of the other stuff is a little bit more built around suspense. So there's also kind of that element. It's going to take a lot to pull me into a movie like this.
If you're not prepared for it, and you're not like a little used to it, it's gonna be a shock to the system.
Yeah.
Like this is probably I don't know if this is exactly accurate, but this is probably like for people today familiar with like the Terrifier movies, Terrifier franchise. Um, it's not as gory as Terrifier is, but for the late 80s, it probably was the equivalent of what Terrifier is today, where people are just like shocked by what they're seeing. So, you know, this is not an unreasonable take from either of you, despite the fact that it is going to make me cry. It's not.
It's pleasurable tears.
It's
pleasurable
not
tears.
unreasonable.
Jeff.
Don't tears. Hey, tears are just waste of good suffering.
That's true.
Well, and I'm gonna say I actually do have what I think is a very good judge-related question, but I'm gonna save it till the very end because I do want to hear both of your comments about kind of a wider topic. So, Steve, again, I apologize. We keep interrupting, and you're clearly so passionate about the points that you're making.
So, Steve, just so I'm clear on the points, we've got lack of Barkerness. What was the second point again?
The first movie, it tells a tighter, better story.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just, it's easier to understand what's happening. Its scope isn't as big. It's just, and it takes more time to kind of get going, which sometimes can be a detriment. But I think here it sets the tone well, for the bloody hijinks to ensue later. And it's, I don't know. There's kind of some funny things, like when Frank, the shitty brother, is first resurrected, and he's all goopy and drippy, and his girlfriend, is looking at him, and he's like, "Don't look at me! Don't look at me!"
His girlfriend, his brother's wife. You mean
his brother's wife?
Girlfriend.
His paramour. I mean,
the point of that was the tristiness of the relationship.
Apparently, the sex scenes, as originally filmed, were way, way more graphic, and the violence wasn't as bad. And because it got an X rating based on that, Clive Barker had to tone it down. Tone down some of the sex.
I think I knew that.
That's what Wikipedia tells me. Oh, yeah. Before I cede the floor, I would like to read this little bit here to support what Jeff was saying. That if anyone at this point is like, fuck these movies, I don't want to watch them, I do encourage you to maybe read the book if you're still, intrigued at all by the setting. Because, so, the 4 Cenobites that appear in the first movie. You got Pinhead. You got a lady whose throat is ripped apart. You got a guy who's no eyes and all teeth, and his teeth chatter. Yeah,
that's his name.
Very original name, Chatter. That's what he does. I don't know if anyone picked that up over the audio.
I don't know if you guys could hear that.
Could you maybe read? Could you do that again, just so our audience really gets a good? Okay, thank you. Okay, just wanted our listeners to get a good sense of that.
And then the last guy is named Butterball.
Correct.
Obviously. And these are just the most horrifying looking creatures ever. And there's a sense of revulsion when you see them on the screen. But as described in the book, this is a quote off of Wikipedia. It says, although antagonist Frank Cotton believes they'll take the form of beautiful women, they appear instead as monsters. Why then was he so distressed to set eyes upon them? Was it the scars that covered every inch of their bodies? The flesh cosmetically punctured and sliced and infibulated, then dusted down with ash? No women, no sighs, only these sexless things with their corrupted flesh. Now that's fucking great writing.
That's some fantastic shit.
That's intriguing. Whereas the images on the screen make me want to vomit, which I guess is its own type of art. And that's why you should pick the first one.
Okay. Very compelling. A lot to consider. Jeff, I think what I'd like to do is just kind of, you can obviously, if you want to offer a retort to any of Steve's, or I kind of sense you know what you're doing here. You want to jump right in. The floor is yours. You may speak at will.
Okay. I don't really know how to attack this. I'll just go ahead and rock with my points, as opposed to just directly rebutting those. So
Irrefutable, he says. My arguments are irrefutable.
So first thing is Dr. Chenard in the second one, who is the villain, and he spoilers abound as always, but he gets turned into a Cenobite. So he is, we have in the first movie, you have Frank, who dies when he first encounters Pinhead, the priest, gets ripped apart, and then because of the blood, he gets resurrected. But the Chenard, when he gets taken by the Cenobites, he's so evil and so effed up that he just gets turned into a Cenobite, and then he's like the worst of them all. From a villain standpoint, Chenard is better than Frank. Frank's kind of a whiny little dude, and he shows back up in the second one and talks about gives a little bit of a lore dump, but Chenard is much more interesting because we get a sort of feel for why he wants the box, why he's looking for these things. Because the first movie, it just starts out with Frank somewhere in Asia talking to somebody buying the box. And then, we get these little flashes and stuff. So, and this is one of the things that is fleshed out a little bit more in the book, of talking about what Frank's after here. And his first experience is a little bit more drawn out and stuff. So some of the things when they find Frank in the labyrinth in the second one, and he kind of talks, some of that is derived from the book. But ultimately, Chenard is just a better villain. And then once he becomes a Cenobite, it's just an incredibly cool design for a character, for a villain. They take the Doctor aesthetic, they roll that in, they get all of his fucked upness, and it comes out with this, like, I don't even know what you would call the apparatus, like this arm that's connected to everywhere but nowhere, and he just gets like whisked around, and he's got all these tentacles and stuff. Just a really cool villain. So cooler than Frank, even when Frank put on the skin suit of his own brother. It's still cooler. The Chenard is definitely better. So there's that one. Then we have the Chenard and Julia relationship. So, excuse me. What really sold me, and it was early on. So I think this was early enough into the movie that both of you would have seen it. But, well, Steve, you would have cut out like right before this, but you've seen the whole movie anyway. So the doctor brings the patient who thinks he's got bugs all over his skin, and he puts him on the mattress that Julia died on in the first movie. He slices himself up, and the blood brings Julia back to life, similar to how it did Frank. And then, but just like Frank in the first movie, Julia is just all sinew and muscle. There's no skin there. But Chenard is like, he's fully engaged. He's fully in with this. And this sort of the way that it depicts this sort of tenuous connection, we've already kind of talked about it, between like fear and titillation and this sort of long-standing relationship that there's been between, sort of horror and sex, where there's always been, horror movies always have some sex involved, generally speaking. Not every horror movie, of course, but lots of them do. And there's a lot of that. There's that sort of this weird space where everything kind of exists together, and it is depicted, that the best depiction of that sort of relationship, I think, in any horror movie ever that I've seen, is the scene where after Julia comes back and she's all just muscle and no skin, and Chenard is wrapping her in gauze. Like, it's this horrific scene where this walking skinless corpse, essentially, and he's covering up all this exposed muscle, and yet, it's played for like this almost like it's foreplay, and it's this sort of weird. So and Chenard is totally into it, and then eventually they do, make out for a little bit and sort of have some, some light sexual interaction. But that scene and then that relationship as the movie goes on between Chenard and Julia, I think is just a really good, especially, and it's something that I always hate to say, like, oh, well, in order to understand this, you also have to understand this completely different form of media, right? So if something can't exist on its own, that's its own fault. But and I still think it exists on its own because I saw it before I read a lot of Clive Barker's stuff. But I think when you sort of get a feel for how Barker likes to tackle these different subjects and everything, and you can sort of see that show up, even though he didn't write it or direct it, you can see that influence show up in this scene. And I just think it's a really, really well done scene, and that's sort of the impetus being for that relationship in that movie. I think it's just one of the reasons that it puts Hellbound over the top. And then the final reason is we have, sort of the ending of it. We talked, one of the reasons that Terminator 2 won and still remains our best sequel, part of it is how it expands upon the lore of the first one in good ways. And I think that's what this movie does as well, because in the first movie, all we get, you open the puzzle box and out come the Cenobites, and we have no idea where they came from, what the deal is. They're even vague, right? Angels to some, demons to others. We don't know what's going on. And then we get that piece of the information, right? Where they came from. They come from the labyrinth. They come from this, they're servants of this Leviathan god thing that sort of lords over this labyrinth. And the whole sequence of seeing the Cenobites, where they come from, just all these different creatures that are in the labyrinth, and then the labyrinth, the Leviathan itself, all of that I think is really good, really interesting lore. It widens the scope, but not so much that it's too much, and comes back to just really, really giving you more to sort of sink your teeth into with that. And I mean, beyond this, the lore gets expanded just beyond these two movies. I mean, there's not only the book, there's other books too. There's sequels to the Hellbound Heart. There's comic books written by Clive Barker, all these other movies and stuff. So I mean, there is a deep, deep lore on all this stuff. And the first like really real taste we get of it is in Hellbound with the labyrinth scene and all that. And I thought that was, and the design of the labyrinth and all that, it just, everything that was good about the first one, just beyond the movie itself, but like the special effects in the first one. I actually had to look up because I thought it was this, it looked so much like The Thing, the way the practical effects and the way they played out on screen looked so similar to John Carpenter's The Thing. And so I had to look it up. It's not the same person, but it is very similar. And they take all that stuff and they put it all to the next level. And they, when they create the labyrinth, it's such a really well done set. All the monsters, creatures, they come, all the Cenobites look, even just a little bit better. It's just all that. I think just in terms of sequels and what you want from a sequel, I think it gives you what you want in that regard. Expanding the lore to a really interesting part where there's more, and you can get more if you want it, but you can also be satisfied with the conclusion that we get. So, yeah, those are my three reasons. Feels anticlimactic to say them the way that I've done, but there you are. Have at you.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. I would like to ask one question of both of you.
Ask away.
And you might have very different answers to it. I don't know if it's going to affect my decision this evening, but I just kind of wanted to hear your opinion. These are both exceedingly violent films. We've never dealt with on this show anything quite this violent. We've dealt with like Schindler's List is a kind of violence that is obviously very different than this kind of Schindler's List is almost a document to show sort of real world violence. This is obviously fantasy violence. What I guess I want to add, this is a deep question, so you can take a moment to think about it if you need to, but what is the point of making a movie like movies like these? You know, what is the point of in the craft of filmmaking making a movie that is, and I'm coming off as cynical in my asking. I don't mean to say that you shouldn't make movies like this, but I'm curious to kind of hear your reflections on what is the point of using the craft of filmmaking to make something so violent and so gory, and what purpose that serves to the art form. I don't know.
Steve, I'll
You're
I'll let
both
you go. I'll let
pondering
you
that.
go first.
I, this is a question I've wondered myself about certain films. Jeff, you brought up the Terrifier series. I've not yet seen one of them, but I've read recaps and descriptions of some of the kills and stuff in there, and I do myself wonder, you know, what is the purpose of this? What does the audience get out of this? And I think I don't have an answer for things like what I assume the Terrifier is based on what I've read, where it's just kind of shock for shock's sake. I do think Clive Barker's, at least in the first one, it creates this sense of dread that slowly builds because you slowly see things that you're not meant to see, and it doesn't just immediately open with, well, I take that back. Frank does get ripped into a million pieces in the first scene by hooks and stuff, and then you see chunks of his body there. But then we get away from it pretty quick, and then slowly as the movie goes on, it ramps up, and the violence and the disgustingness gets more and more apparent, until finally, when you're presented with the Cenobites, you're seeing something just truly awful. And I think the slow play of it allows him to work and create a sense of dread that you don't get from a lot of other things. It's the sense of seeing something that shouldn't be seen, of this something that is existing that you do not want to exist. But it's more than just, you know, an unnatural state of things or just fear. It's just something that's so wrong on a visceral level that it has its own sort of appeal. Not for me so much, but I do understand the point of it. And I think, as Jeff will probably point out, it's this combination, you know, we're often drawn to things that we fear. And this combination of this estuary, so to speak, of sensuality and fear and terror and horror, with, you know, sometimes lust and all these things that where they all kind of mix together. That's fertile ground for human existence, let alone movies and fiction. And I think this just gives them a way to explore that, whereas just doing a pure slasher movie or something like that doesn't really get you there. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's the best I got right now.
I thought that's a good answer, Jeff. You're a big horror film guy, so I'm curious to hear kind of your response to this.
So the way I like to think about it oftentimes is like going to an amusement park, right? Stick with me. So you go to an amusement park, you go get on a ride. We're on Kansas City, you go to Worlds of Fun, you go to the Mamba, right? Mamba has a 200-foot drop, almost straight down, right? I mean, I would guess the majority of people, or maybe even something like the Detonator, at Worlds of Fun might be better, or just bungee jumping in general. Most people probably don't want to take a precipitous multi-100-foot drop, but when you're in a controlled environment and you can do it and you can be okay, there is something there that sort of, gets released within you. There's this feeling, there's this rush, there's that sort of thing that you're going after. So I think there's some of that element in a horror movie, especially with the violence, where it's like, okay, this is very violent, it is very graphic, but it's controlled. It's a movie. It's not something that's happening to you. You're not watching a live stream of this happening to somebody real. Everyone, all the actors are okay. Everyone in the movie is okay. It's a controlled fear scenario, similar to a roller coaster. And then I think the second piece of it, and Steve, you kind of hit on this as well, is there is that sort of confrontation, right? Like everyone has intrusive thoughts, like, oh, you know, you're carrying your dog down the stairs, and it's like, oh my God, what happens if I trip and fall and I fall right on top of my dog, and it's just like, that would be, and then I don't want to think about this, it's, so there's sorts of things like that where I think that there's, we get confronted with these certain things and then we sort of just push them away. And so horror movies allow us to confront a lot of these inner fears that we have that we maybe don't exactly explore on our own. I'm not going to sit here, Clive Barker clearly does because he writes the books, but I don't know that I will necessarily sit here and imagine, writing a description of people who has their throat torn open in a very vaginal looking way. I'm not probably going to sit here and think that kind of stuff up on my own. And if some thought like that were to occur, I would probably be like, ooh, that's gross. I don't want to think about that. But if I know that I'm going into a movie and I know there's going to be some of this stuff, but I know it's 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever, and then it's going to be over, I can allow myself in this controlled environment to be confronted with these things and allow myself to sort of see how that makes me feel and see what it makes me feel, and then I can interrogate that on my own. And so then I'm not thinking of these gross things, but I am interrogating how they made me feel and why they make me feel these certain things. And it's, it goes just beyond violence. I think that's with all of horror movies. Something, a movie like Hereditary is not nearly as violent as these Hellraiser movies, or as gory, I should say. But there's still a lot of those similar types of things that it's confronting you with all these things and then asking you to feel a certain way about them, or to see how you feel about them, and then interrogate that within yourself. And that's what I think draws me to horror so much, is that it's a controlled environment where something can be presented with me. I can be confronted with something that's uncomfortable and then sort of grapple with that on my own. And I from a lot of people that I've talked to and seen talk to, that's kind of a similar feeling on the horror genre, both books and movies, which I read a lot of horror books as well. So that's my take on why you would make something like this.
I think those are both terrific answers. To kind of expound on it, not too much more, but I don't have a source for this, but I would be the exception to this myself, someone with an anxiety disorder, but I've heard that there are other people who have anxiety disorders that like horror films, and there is a
I'm on medication for anxiety, so
yeah, and so I
yeah.
think I know that at least three of us. I don't want to speak for all, but myself, Jeff, and Steve are. I won't speak for Brandon, but yeah, we all all of us have anxiety. We're millennials. Come on. But and again, I would be the exception to this, but I've heard other people say, and I've read in various places from a psychological concept, that there is almost a kind of a comforting notion to horror films, in that it is a controlled anxiety, and that if you have an anxiety disorder, it kind of allows you to view something in a controlled environment and you have the control over when it stops and starts can actually be strangely kind of a comforting experience almost. Um, that it allows, and not that it's comforting, like they get scared and they get nervous and they, all the things that
Yeah.
we feel when we're watching a
You
scary
have the
movie.
power over your anxiety now.
Right. But it's like it's a fantasy world that you're going into. You're watching a fake story, and so that kind of almost helps you regulate that up and down. So I think you guys are, I think you both hit the nail on the head, honestly. The only thing neither of you said that I think not so, I don't know these films, but maybe. Certainly there was a time where I think you saw a lot of this like in post Vietnam, like where violent movies were kind of a reflection on the violence in society, and I think maybe there's a little bit of that in different periods of film. But all great points. I have made I'll give you both a closing argument. I think I've made my decision, but I want you both to have a closing argument. So,
Steve, you
Steve,
have the first movie. Go
you
ahead.
have the first one. If you want to hit us, if you have any closing thoughts, please.
My well thought out and articulated arguments earlier didn't win you over. I'll leave you with this. Roger Ebert gave both of these movies 1.5 a star out of 4 stars. So if even someone as as schooled in the art of film criticism can't really find much there, then I think we're left with whatever your own heart tells you. I don't know that anything I say or can't say is going to convince you. I think we've the true friends that we made along the way. God damn it, how's that saying go? Whatever.
Maybe the Cenobites are the real friends.
Yeah, the Cenobites are the real friend. I think while maybe not determining which movie is better, this process we've revealed a lot about why these movies are made, and we've had some good discussions along the way of what it means to watch one of these movies and what it means to maybe even make one of these movies. I don't know. I'm rambling. Ultimately, I mean, I hate to do this, but you didn't finish the second one for a reason. So that's what I'm going to have to go with. It's not a very strong argument, but that's what I got. Jeff,
your closing arguments?
Well, so first of all, something the only possible like rebuttal that I did bring up, you talk about how the second one, just kind of jumps right in, following from the first. That was a bit of a trend, I think, at that time. Your favorite horror movie franchise, Steve, Halloween, does the exact same thing, and did it first, to be clear. Friday the 13th does it. Nightmare on Elm Street, not quite as much. But so the idea of like jumping in on a sequel, like literally in the events of the film right after the ending of the first one, was something that was a little bit more commonplace at that time. But as for closing arguments, it is hard to make an argument for a film that you guys haven't seen. So that's a little disappointing. But
technically, I did see it 2 years ago.
That's true. I should say, but for our judge hasn't seen it. But I just think a lot of the themes that were in the book that the first movie explored, but didn't quite explore as far as as in as much depth as the book did. I think the second one does, while also adding elements to the lore, to the universe, to the first movie, that make it more interesting, more compelling, and then ties it up into a package with great set design, great villain design with Chenard, And I think Chenard, the actor who plays Chenard, is a better actor on top of just being a better villain than Frank was, than the actor who played Frank. And then I think the performance from, God, I used to know her name, but the woman who plays Julia, she's better in the second one as well. So, there's a lot of things that the first movie does well, and then I think the second movie just expands on that and then does them even better. And what more can you ask from a sequel at that point?
May I, at the risk of stepping on toes here, may I ask one question of my opposing counsel?
Please.
Please.
And this is going against everything I was taught and everything you'll hear about doing any sort of questioning as a lawyer. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. But which of these is your favorite movie, Jeff? Which do you prefer?
These two?
Yeah.
Definitely Hellbound. Definitely.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I was wondering.
100%.
I've made my decision. And I really did try to do it because I didn't really finish the second film and I didn't like the first film very much. So I tried to kind of do it based on the arguments. I here's and it was an argument that the council presented. I am going to go with Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. The reason being, I think Jeff made an interesting point that I didn't even really kind of put together is that, and Steve, you kind of made this point, but you didn't. You ended up sort of making it in the opposite way. Clive Barker is his name, correct? Who wrote the book and directed the first one? I'm getting that right?
Correct.
Okay. You say that it has this Clive Barker-esque thing in the first one, and then that's absent in the second one, but that's just really a name. I think the point that Jeff is making, that it took this story that this guy had written as a book and made into a movie, and does, even in the first 25 minutes, you can tell, really expands the mythology. I mean, honestly, to just look at the first one, and then to try to even make a sequel to that of like, where do you go? How are you going to expand that? Again, I don't personally enjoy these movies, but I think that is perhaps a grander achievement. So I am going to go with Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. I know that's disappointing to you, Steve, because you're a big fan of these movies, and so I know you were banking on.
How can you deny my passion on this too?
Yeah, it's also. I will say it's hard to deny. Jeff knows more about this than us.
You made the right choice.
I'm not gonna like sit here and be petty and be like, "Ooh, but Steve." Like Jeff clearly is the expert here, and he knows more about any of these movies than anyone here.
This isn't the same type of deference I got with Top Gun, but you know what? I still think you made the right choice.
And something that I might say about the first one, and I didn't say this as part of the arguments, just because it feels bad to almost say it about Clive Barker, who I like so much as a writer, but I think with him. And this probably goes for anybody. Like if you're going to write and direct a movie based on a book that you wrote, you almost want a little something to sort of pull you away a little bit, right? Because you wrote the book, you went through that entire editing process, you put things in, you took things out, etc. So at this point, you're like, this is perfect. This is the book that I want to make, presumably. And so then when it gets to the movie, it's just like, well, I'm just going to make this into a movie. Whereas sometimes, when you're the Godfather and you're Mario Puzo, sometimes you need a co-writer like Francis Ford Coppola to be like, hey, let's expand on this a little bit more. Let's cut out this part about Johnny Fontaine. Nobody gives a shit. Let's do this. Or in Jaws, like this whole affair thing, let's cut this out of there. Let's focus more on Hooper. Let's not make him a dick in the movie and make him a little bit more sympathetic. Things like that where
we even talked when we season 1 when we did our Jaws episode, we discussed how the hinting of it in the film, the flirtatious nature between those two is better than actually just depicting the affair. It's, I mean, it
Yes,
is a better
agreed.
movie than it is a book. And that's one of the reasons is that like they're very flirtatious, and Spielberg knew that like it's just gonna be the hinting at
Almost
this
like an Easter
potential
egg, really,
thing.
for those who read
Yeah,
the book.
it's great. It's much better acted that way. It feels better and more natural that way.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, if that's because I saw the Hellraiser. I saw the movie before I read the book, so it wasn't something where I read the book and then had expectations. But I felt like I was a little let down by Hellraiser, but I liked it enough to go to the second one, and then I was hooked. And then I read the book and all that. But So I think, and the second one, Clive Barker, he did the story, but he didn't write or direct. So he probably could have written the first one as long as there was a little bit extra input, like, hey, let's explore this a little bit more, let's cut this out or whatever. Because I mean, it's kind of crazy going through the book, except for a few scenes, like at the beginning, and then I think a little bit at the end, like the lines, the dial. I mean, at one point I was watching it, just kind of flipping through the book and like seeing, the lines taken directly out of that. Like it was almost just perfect adaptation, which sometimes can be good, but also can sometimes be bad. Sometimes maybe you want to do a little bit different. So,
Well,
so there we have it. So,
it's a spirited debate. Again, our fans were just craving this one.
we
What I
finally
don't
got it.
have-
We
so-
finally got to it.
We finally got to it. Now let me very quickly here on my telephone, my telephonic device here. Because how
It's
many? I want to make sure here. So that is it's 6-5. Am I getting that right?
6-4.
So no, because
'Cause this
Terminator
was week
2.
10.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're right.
it can't be 6-5. This is our 10th week.
6. Well, then how is there?
Because we had Godfather, Father of the Bride, Sister Act, Top Gun, Star Wars, and Home Alone. That's 6, all one. And then Terminator 2, Shrek 2, Christmas Vacation, and now Hellbound. Those sequels have won.
Why am I seeing? Oh, okay. Oh, you've already put the X next to Hellbound. There, I got it. Okay. Somebody already went in and like put the X next to. Okay, that's what I'm counting. All right,
Yeah,
so
that
it
was
is
me. That was me.
6-4.
As soon as you pulled that up,
Okay. I was
He
like,
was
how does this? I was like,
always
how
have
does
it-
this not equal 10? Like, he's right. This should equal 10. Like, what the hell are we doing here? Okay.
I always have the spreadsheet pulled up so that as soon as the winner's announced, I just go in and put it in there so I don't forget.
Okay, so it does. But with that said, not initially as close as I was saying, but it does get us a little bit closer. The sequels really needed a win there, so that this was a week that they definitely got the win that they needed. Now, we asked, every week we were asking this question. I think we have determined, we've said that Terminator 2 Judgment Day is still the best sequel ever made in terms of the ones that we're reviewing, which is honestly all the big important ones. Is anybody here prepared to say that Hellbound Hellraiser 2 is a better sequel than Terminator 2 Judgment Day?
As much as I love it, I can't in good conscience make that argument.
Honestly, and if Jeff, you don't need to hear from anybody else because Jeff loves these movies. So if he's saying no, I think that's going to be a pretty hard no from everybody else. Now, with that said, next week,
Yeah, I think our next
we've
2
got-
weeks.
it-
This is gonna be a fun
I gotta
one.
tell you,
This next
the
week.
next few weeks are going to be, we are closing and we've got 4 weeks left and we've got some really
bangers.
exciting ones. We got some bangers. Next week, we've got Jeff will be defending Alien and Steve will be defending Aliens. And I'll tell you, I'll be the judge again that week, and I won't burn a lot of content, but when I discussed this season with a coworker, a friend of mine, first one he said, he's like, "Oh, you got to do Alien versus Aliens." So like this is one of those classics that people debate all the time. Jeff has a ton of Alien stuff.
This is the illustrated story of the first movie, the comic book version by Walt Simonson. I was so stoked when I found this. It's awesome.
We got
And then also
memorabilia.
there's other comics. Yeah.
We got
I got my
a
whole
ton of
shelf.
great. he's got a whole Alien shelf. So we've got
Yes.
a ton of exciting things. He's showing us on video now. He's got
Right there. That's oh no, wait, sorry. Right there. That's my Alien Predator shelf. There it is.
My only concern with these is they're both so good and so revered and so different that it's going to be kind of a just which one do you like better? Because they're, one's a horror movie and one's an action movie.
I will also say I totally dropped the ball on public comment for this week. I forgot to post it. Next week I will absolutely do it because I'm sure that our fan bet I will get a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I'm curious what
that
people
poll
You're
out there.
this week it would have been Hellraiser 2. We got one vote. Vote
We got
from
one
Jeff
vote.
Herr. Voting for Hellbound. Hellbound is the winner. 100% of the votes.
That's interesting. Okay, so with 100% of the vote, Hellraiser 2 wins the public debate. Yeah, so that is our episode for this week. Again, if you have any feedback, particularly about next week, you may have feedback about this week, but with Alien versus Aliens, duelofthegreats@gmail.com. We are at Duel of the Greats on all the socials, except for TikTok, where we are at Duel Podcast. So please send us a message, send us an email. We love hearing from the listeners. And if that is nothing else, gentlemen, I will bid you all a good week, and we will catch you all next week here.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think we have an email from a listener, but you know what? Always leave them wanting more. So we'll address it next week.
Read it next week. We'll send it to me and I'll read it next week.
All
right. That's it. What was this? Episode 10? Season 4, episode 10? Duel of the Greats. We are signing out. Thank you very much.
What is your pleasure?